sinabi natin merong mga instances in which corporate officers or unscrupulous individuals commit certain acts that are prejudicial to other persons, sometimes acts that are borderline criminal, and in order to try to evade liability, in order to evade justice, they hide behind the corporate veil. And in order to hold these people liable, we have to pierce it. Kasi 'di ba? If it's a criminal act, paano mo nga naman maipapakulong ang isang korporasyon? And therefore, we pierce the veil and we assail not the corporation itself, but the person hiding behind it. Kagaya nga ng napasadahan natin, no? There are 4 attributes of a corporation. By way of refresher lang para hindi natin makakalimutan. First, of course, it is an artificial being with separate and distinct personality. It is created by operation of law. It has the right to succession, and it has the powers and attributes conferred by law or incident to its existence. Now, of course, no, with regard to alter ego cases related to the matter of piercing the corporate veil, the mere fact as a general rule that a corporation owns all of the stocks of another corporation taken by itself is not sufficient to justify the conclusion that they are just one entity. Kasi minsan, no, merong isang korporasyon na mas malaki. Merong expansive na office spaces. Now, there is a smaller corporation na nakikiopisina doon sa bigger corporation. Nakikigamit ng mga resources ng bigger corporation. Now, the temptation would be parang madaling pagkonektahin itong dalawang korporasyon na to, so much so that perhaps someone can argue na itong si smaller corporation, shell company lang ito nung mas malaking korporasyon. Ngunit sinasabi sa atin ng jurisprudence, sinasabi sa atin ng Korte Suprema, particularly in the case of MR Holdings Limited versus Bahar, na hindi porke pagmamayari ng isang mas malaking korporasyon ang mga stocks ng isang mas maliit na korporasyon, hindi porke ganon, ibig sabihin nun, iisang entity lang silang dalawa. If the subsidiary is used to perform legitimate functions, kung wala namang questionable doon sa ginagawa, doon sa trabaho ng mas maliit na entity, we have to respect its separate existence. Even if this smaller new corporation was the result of what we call a spin-off of a former division of the parent company. Kasi minsan ganyan, we have a big conglomerate, we have a big corporation. Isa sa mga opisina nun, nag-branch off, nagtayo ng sariling korporasyon. Sometimes it happens. Would it be right to say without any other proof, without any other evidence na, dahil spin-off itong bagong korporasyon na to, therefore, alter ego lang siya nitong bigger, older corporation? No. We have to be careful with making this conclusion. There has to be more evidence in order for us to connect the dots and say na shell company lang ito. Sa totoo, hindi naman sila dalawang korporasyon, iisa lang sila. Now, of course, we have to take into account these particular circumstances. There has to be control, not merely as to the stocks, but complete domination. Hindi lang porke, kagaya nga ng sinabi natin kanina, not just because Corporation A owns all or most of the stocks of Corporation B, does not mean that Corporation A and Corporation B are in truth and in fact one entity only. Hindi ganon. There has to be complete domination. Ibig sabihin, malinaw na si Corporation B, puppet lang ni Corporation A kasi si Corporation A, it calls the shots. Hindi si Corporation B yung nagdedesisyon sa sarili niyang corporate direction, kundi si Corporation A. Si Corporation A yung nagsasabi, gawin mo to. Invest in this. Buy this property. No? Appoint these people. Corporation B, opo, copy po, noted po. There must be complete domination in all aspects, in finances, in policy, and in business practice, particularly with respect to the transaction, attack, or assailed. Now, of course, maliban dun sa control, per se, this control must have been used by the defendant to commit a fraud or wrong. Kailangan merong panloloko, meron tayong illegal na gawain na ma-identify to perpetuate the violation of a statutory or other positive legal breach of duty. There is a violation, in other words, of the law, or a dishonest and unjust act in contravention of the legal right of the plaintiff or yung party na magsasampa ng kaso. And finally, this control, this complete domination must have proximately caused the injury or unjust loss complained of. These three requisites were laid down by the Supreme Court in the 2022 case of PNB versus Andrada Electric and Engineering Corporation. Now, ito, for example, corporations A and B. Pareho sila ng stockholders. Pare-parehong grupo ng tao yung may-ari nung stocks ni Corporation A at ni Corporation B. Walang pinag-iba. Same. Pareho lang din yung manager nila. Iisang tao lang. Pareho lang din yung market nila. Yung captive market ni Corporation A, yun din ang captive market ni Corporation B. Tapos pareho din sila ng office premises. Kung nasa san si Corporation A, nandoon din si Corporation B. Tapos, kagaya nga ng sinabi natin, 'di ba? Just this fact alone does not mean na alter ego si Corporation B ni Corporation A and vice versa. We have to take into account whether there is additional evidence. At ito yung additional evidence. Ito, merged business operations. Yung ginagawa ng mga proyekto, mga business endeavor ni Corporation A, nandoon din si Corporation B, nakabuntot, laging nakadikit. Parang playing a support role. Ngayon, yung mga projects naman ni B, nandoon din si Corporation A. Parang kambal sa, ano bang tawag dito? Parang kambal sa uma. No? Almost as if Corporation A is an alter ego of Corporation B and vice versa. Na illusory yung separate juridical personalities nilang dalawa, and in fact, in truth, they are just really one corporate entity. Okay? Such that, no? For example, si Corporation A, pinablicize niya na they are already going under. No? They are already going under. The board of directors will have to leave the country kasi di umano nalulugi na daw sila. Pero actually, they are just trying to evade their creditors. For example, si Corporation A, it was revealed na isa pala silang multi-level marketing scam. No? Parang One Lightning dati, if you're familiar with One Lightning. Na actually, maraming alter ego ang One Lightning. There are other similar corporations then in existence na lahat yun hinabol ng SEC, no, ng Securities and Exchange Commission. Kasi kung titingnan mo yung mga website nila, kung titingnan mo yung mga corporate documents nila, pare-pareho yung board of directors. And mostly, pare-pareho din na multi-level marketing, yung mga anong tawag dito, direct selling, yung business endeavor ng lahat ng mga korporasyon na to. Ngayon, no, sabihin natin si Corporation A, ayan na, nag-a-attempt na mag-abscond yung board of directors. Pag mayroong creditor na pupunta dun sa opisina, they are being turned away kasi nalulugi na po si Corporation A. In as much as we want to repay, no, our debts to you, wala na po talaga kaming assets. Ang aming board of directors ay hindi na rin matagpuan, no? They cannot be contacted anymore. Hanggang sa paglipas ng mga linggo, they are not entertaining people anymore. Nagsara ng tuluyan yung office premises ni Corporation A. Ngayon, si Corporation B, nagfa-thrive, no? Meron inactive business pa rin si Corporation B. Ngayon, no, itong mga creditors ni Corporation A, syempre, dahil parang nararamdaman nila, natatamang hinala nila na si Corporation B actually alter ego lang ni Corporation A, doon sila pumunta. They demanded payment of their debts, no? Sabi ng mga creditors, alam namin na pareho ang board of directors ni Corporation A at ni Corporation B. Alam namin yung scheme na gusto ninyong patakbuhin dito. Ang gusto lang naman namin po ay simple lang. Bayaran ninyo yung utang ninyo sa amin. Ibalik ninyo yung pera na kinuha ninyo sa amin. Yung pinangako ninyo na 10,000 na gagawing 50,000, isoli po ninyo. Kung hindi ho, ipapatulpo ho namin kayo, sabi ng mga creditors. Ngayon, ang sabi ng mga staff, mga officers ni Corporation B, ibang korporasyon po ito. Basically telling them na wrong number po. No, ba't kayo tumatawag dito? We are a different corporation. However, no, lahat ng nasa checklist na to, lahat to nakatik. Same stockholders, same investors, no? Pare-parehong mga muka, pare-parehong mga pangalan. Sila-sila lang din na naglalaro. No, sila-sila yung kumbaga nandoon the ringleader and the goons nung mga MLM scheme na to. Pareho lang din yung manager nila na nagtatago. Pareho lang din yung captive market kasi nga parehong direct selling kuno yung kanilang business. Okay? So, alter ego. Hindi pa pwedeng i-invoke ni Corporation B na meron siyang separate personality kay Corporation A. Kasi if we consider the totality of the evidence, si Corporation A at si Corporation B, kung tutuusin mo, iisa lang siya. All right. That is how we apply the alter ego rule or the alter ego doctrine. Sometimes corporations, sometimes corporate officers try to pull off questionable deeds, try to pull off, outright crimes. And in order to prevent them from doing so, in order to prevent them from getting away with it, not only can we pierce the veil of corporate personality in order to strike at the unscrupulous people behind the veil, hiding behind it, pwede din nating tuhugin, so to speak, yung dalawang korporasyon na kung tutuusin mo, kapag binasa mo mga dokumento, pag in-appreciate mo yung ebidensya, iisa lang talaga sila. Have you ever seen Bruce Wayne and Batman in the same room? No, because they are only one person. Now, how are corporations born? In answering this question, we have what we call the concession theory. You see, a corporation, sabi natin, di ba, what is the first characteristic of a corporation? A corporation is an artificial being. Tunog cyborg, tunog android, no? Kung familiar kayo dun sa kwento ni Mary Bryce Shelley, Frankenstein, di ba? It's alive. Ganon ang korporasyon. However, unlike other contracts that are perfected by mere what? As a general rule, contracts are what? Contracts are consensual, di ba? Generally, contracts are perfected by mere consent. And therefore, all it takes is what? A meeting of the minds in order for a contract, or in the case of partnership, a contractual entity to spring forth. But a corporation is different because a corporation owes its very existence not to the consent of any of the incorporators, not to the decision of any of the stockholders, but to the law. A corporation is a creature of law. A corporation is an artificial creature without any existence until it has received the imprimatur of whom? The state, acting according to law. Through which office? Through the Securities and Exchange Commission. The life of a corporation, kaya siya concession theory na tinatawag, it is a concession made by the state. Usong-uso yung root word niyan ngayon dahil tapos na ang eleksyon. Concede. Concede. What happens when you concede? You surrender, di ba? Sumusuko ka na, isinusuko mo na. So, ang state, by giving life to a corporation, it surrenders, It surrenders, basically, life to this corporate entity. Kung familiar kayo sa Genesis, di ba? Hininga, Hinga ng Diyos sa luwad or sa clay in order to give life to this first man and this first woman. Basically ganun, no? The state concedes, surrenders life in order to give being to this artificial creature that we call a corporation. Ngayon, the boring way to say this is a corporation does not gain any personality unless and until the SEC grants the application of the incorporators. The applicants no submit documents to the SEC, at pag nakita ni SEC na okay to, then the SEC issues what we call a certificate of incorporation. At that very moment pa lang, doon pa lang nabubuhay ang korporasyon. Not because the parties agree na, let's form a corporation, let's do it. Wala pang korporasyon nun, class. It is only when the SEC approves the application, issues a certificate, that is only when a corporation subsists. Okay? Now, of course, not all corporations are like that. Okay? Generally kasi, when we speak of corporations, the first thing that comes to mind is yung private corporation. No? We live in a capitalist society. We live in a very business, commerce-driven world. Kahit saan ka lumingon, maraming business people. Maraming mga nagbabakasakali na kikita sila ng pera, yayaman sila dito sa ating dog-eat-dog world. Okay? Now, alam natin na maraming korporasyon, maliit man o malaki. The very school we are in, CSTC, is a corporation. Most churches in existence here in the Philippines and in abroad are also considered corporations. Hospitals, private hospitals are corporations. But the vast majority of the corporations we are familiar with are private business entities. Banco de Oro, Jollibee, McDonald's, no? Procter and Gamble, Unilever, Lamoyan Corporation, no? Yung kumpanya ng mga Villars, Camellia, di ba? Lahat yan korporasyon. These are private corporations and they are created under the provisions of the revised corporation code. And how do they do it? Persons who want to create a private corporation shall file the appropriate articles of incorporation. Take note of the term. Huwag niyong kalilimutan to. Articles of incorporation. Or AOI, no? With the SEC. Yan yung isasubmit mo, yan yung application form. Now, the SEC will of course exercise its power of review. Para ka lang nagpasa ng application sa eskwelahan for a scholarship or para ka lang nagpasa ng job application. The SEC will study the application, the SEC will study the documents you attach to the articles, and if the SEC thinks no, that you should be granted a certificate, it will do so. The SEC will then issue a certificate of incorporation, and like I said earlier, it is only at this point that we can say that a corporation's life has begun. Now, no, we also have corporations created by law. No? Like for example, kung familiar kayo, sino pa dito ang nagpapadala or nakaranas magpadala ng sulat? As in through snail mail. Doesn't matter in what context. Kung susulat kayo sa kamag-anak ninyo sa malayong probinsya or kung nagpapadala kayo ng sulat doon sa pinag-internshipan ninyo o kundi kaya naman meron kayong ka-pen pal kung naabutan nyo pa yun. No, I think mine is the last generation na nakaranas mag-pen pal through snail mail. Has anybody here tried sending a letter through the post office? Meron ba? O wala na? Hindi nyo na naabutan? O sige, Gerson, you've raised your hand. You're recognized. You tried. You already have sent a letter.
Yes, sir.
Ah.
Nung high school po.
Oh. If you don't mind me asking, what letter was it?
Yun po ay parang ano din siya ng school namin. Parang part ng activity. Pinadala din po sa mga parents po namin.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Gerson. You see, the Philippine Post Office is a government-owned and controlled corporation. Korporasyon po yan. Merong mga opisina o ahensya ng gobyerno na in actuality, mga korporasyon. Remember that. Remember that. Okay? Itong mga korporasyon na to, these government corporations are created, more often than not, they are created by special laws that we call charters. Okay? As a general rule, public corporations are created through special laws. Private corporations cannot be created by law. No? Yung mga corporations created through republic acts. Like for example, one such corporation is this entity that we call MINDA, no? Mindanao Development Authority, and its predecessor, the Southern Philippines Development Administration. Mga public corporations din yan. Mga government corporations created by law. Yang MINDA na yan, yan yung pinamumunuan ni former chair, one-time senatorial candidate. I think hindi siya nakalusot, si Manny Tinyol, if you're familiar with the guy, if you've heard of him. No? Yan, mga korporasyon din yan, class. So, they are created by charters. They are created by special laws. Now, by way of exception, we have GOCCs na actually, they might as well be treated as private corporations. So, okay na tayo sa created by operation of law. At least malinaw sa atin that corporations, unlike partnerships and other similar business organizations, they are not created by mere consent. They are created by law. Now, let us move to the third characteristic, the right of succession, which I believe I have discussed in passing last Saturday. The right of succession refers to the capacity of a corporation to continue its existence despite the changes on the persons who compose it. Unlike partnership, which is dissolved once a single partner dies. Diba? The personality of a corporation continues despite the change in the lineup of its stockholders or of its members or of its board members or officers. For example, no, bumili ka ng 2 shares of stock sa Banco de Oro, sa BDO. Noong tumaas yung value niya, you decide to sell, no, the shares of stock. Now, what is the implication this early? I want to tell you this. Ano ang implication? Though I believe I've told you this last Saturday. Ano ang implication if you buy at least 1 share of stock in a corporation? Like bumili ka sa Jollibee Foods Corporation o bumili ka sa SM, no, ng isang share of stock lang. Kasi wala kang masyadong funds. Gusto mo lang masabi na you are a shareholder. Diba? Bumili ka. No? The implication is that you are technically a part owner of the corporation. Though of course, hindi ka pwedeng sumugod dun sa head office sa sabihin na, bigyan nyo ang kape. Hindi nyo ba alam na may-ari din ako ng korporasyon na to? Of course, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Nakakahiya. No? But, that is technically the implication of it. You're a part owner. Now, if you sell, no, sabihin natin yung nag-iisa mong share of stock, sabihin natin 2 na yung shares of stock mo, binenta mo, nung tumaas yung value niya kasi kailangan mo ng pera. No? Binenta mo siya. So ngayon, from 2 shares of stock in say Jollibee, yung 2 shares mo naging 0 na. So hindi ka na part owner. Does that have any effect on the existence of Jollibee Foods Corporation? Of course not. Because Jollibee Foods, like any other corporation, has the right of succession. Kahit na mag-iba pa yung listahan ng stockholders niya, kahit na makailang palit siya ng komposisyon ng board members niya, kahit na mag-iba yung CEO niya, kasi syempre lahat tayo tumatanda, no? Lahat tayo eventually at some point we need to retire from work, we need to enjoy the days of our old age. Nevertheless, the corporation will still continue existing. Ito for example, no, Henry C., chairman ng SMIC until 2017 when he retired. Ngayon, no, napalitan siya ng mas bata malamang ni Jose Sio. Though I don't know how young this person is, but evidently much younger than the late great Henry C. Now, of course, SMIC continues to exist to this very day. Kahit na nawala na sumakabilang buhay na si Henry C. and the assets and the riches of the former richest person in the country has been split into 4 among the 4 children of Henry C. At ngayon, yung 4 na anak na yun, they occupy ranks, I think, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And now the position of the richest person in the country has now been given to whom? To Manny Villar. No? So, there's that. I think you get the idea of the right of succession already. Now, we move forward finally to the last attribute or the last characteristic of a corporation. It has powers, attributes, and properties. So PAP, PAP. What's up, PAPs? No? We have to remember here the theory of special capacities or what we call the limited capacity doctrine. Ang sabi dito, ang powers ng isang korporasyon ay limited lang. Hindi siya kagaya ng mga ibang business organizations like for example partnership na kung saan ang limitasyon ng powers na pwede niyang i-exercise ay as in any other contract, 'di ba? Ano ang sinasabi sa freedom to stipulate or dun sa autonomy of contract, 'di ba? Parties are free to stipulate anything provided na hindi contrary to law, etc., 'di ba? So, sky's the limit. Kahit na anong ilapag mo doon basta hindi labag sa batas, okay lang. No? Pwede kang magtayo ng partnership na ang business ay library/cafe, no? Pwede kang magbasa habang nagkakape. Nothing will stop you. O kung gusto mong magbukas ng partnership na ang business ay internet cafe na literal na cafe, no? You can play Dota, you can play Mobile Legends, no, or League of Legends while having coffee. Kahit na ano pa 'yan, no? As long as hindi siya contrary to law, as long as it does not contravene the civil code, it's all right. But a corporation's powers are comparatively limited because no corporation can exercise any powers except those conferred, number 1, by the law, number 2, by the articles of incorporation, number 3, those which can be implied from the express powers of a corporation, kung ano yung nakasulat, no? Of course, di ba? Accompanying what is expressly provided are those that can be implied from those which were expressly provided. And lastly, those that are necessary or incidental to the exercise of the powers conferred. Hindi ganun ka-expansive. Kung ano ang nakalagay sa batas, kung anong nakalagay sa articles of incorporation, and the powers that you can imply when reading between the lines doon sa batas at sa articles, yun lang ang kayang gawin ng korporasyon. All right? So, again, no, we have express powers conferred by the law and the articles. We have implied powers, which we can see by reading between the lines. And finally, incidental powers that are incidental to the first 2 categories or classes. Now, if the act of the corporation does not fall, no, within the express powers or the implied powers or the incidental powers, we call that act ultra vires. However, no, let me correct just in case, no, kasi iniisip minsan na mga tao who first encounter the term ultra vires, the tendency would be to equate ultra vires to voidness, no? But no. In case you think that, let me correct you. When we say an act is ultra vires, we do not necessarily mean that the act is void. Sabi ng Supreme Court sa University of Mindanao versus Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas et al. In a decision dated January 11, 2016. Long story short, an ultra vires act is not void but voidable. You've already taken up oblicon, you know the implication when an act is voidable. To jog your memory, a voidable action, like a voidable contract, is valid until annulled. A voidable action, like a voidable contract, may be ratified. In this case, an ultra vires act of a corporation may be ratified by the stockholders. And if no action is instituted in court to annul this ultra vires action, it is considered valid until annulled. And when ratified, it may become binding and enforceable. Okay? Ultra vires acts are actions that are not illegal and void ab initio, but are merely outside the scope of the articles of incorporation. Hindi siya void, merely voidable. Remember that. Remember this citation. Remember this case. So we're done with